Good evening, everyone. We're pleased to welcome you to this candidate forum sponsored by the League of Women Voters and ETHS, Evanston Township High School, Parents Engaged. My name is Mary Kelly, and I am currently an officer in the League of Women Voters of Evanston. The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan political organization dedicated to promoting the active and informed participation of citizens in government. The League neither endorses nor opposes candidates for public office. ETHS Parents Engaged is an informal network working to foster communication among parents, students, administrators, educators, and the community to promote the education and well-being of all ETHS students at home, in school, and in the community. ETHS Parents Engaged neither endorses nor opposes candidates for public office. And if you would allow me to introduce Elliot Frolickstein Appel, he is here representing the ETHS Parents Engaged, along with his thanks to his staff, Robbie.
Our staff, ETHS's staff.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Robbie Brown, Ann Hunwick, and William Jenkins. And William Jenkins is on the video machine. Our moderator today is Gilda Carew. She's been a member of the League of Women Voters since 1976, when she joined in Ocean County, New Jersey. She has been a member of the League of Women Voters of the Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Buffalo Grove area since the early 1980s and has served as president and in several other positions. And now, for our candidate forum, I present Gilda.
Thank you, Mary, and welcome everyone to this forum sponsored by the League of Women Voters. We're really glad to see those of you who came out in person, and also those of you who are watching. We can't see you, but we're glad that some of you are watching on live stream or will be watching later on because this forum is being recorded. I'd like to review what we're doing tonight. We've got 4 candidates who are sitting up here are running for 3 4-year terms on the school board for District 202. One candidate, Mira Anti, is running unopposed as a write-in candidate for a 2-year term. She was appointed and she is now running to fulfill another 2 years on the board. So the whole board is consists of 7 candidates and not candidates, 7 people, and so this year you'll be electing 3 people to the board. And our candidates tonight are Monique Parsons, Leah Pekars, Kristen Scotty, and Liz Rolowitz. They are the 4 who are running for the 3 positions, so you can vote for 3 of them. I'll review the rules of our forum, and I'll repeat again, it is being live streamed and recorded. It's a nonpartisan event, so no one is running as part of a political party. The candidates did agree to these rules in advance. I live outside of the district, so I have no personal interest in who wins or loses here. The forum, before the forum began, all of the candidates drew lots, little pieces of paper, that determined when they would be giving their opening statements. So they are seated in the order in which they'll be speaking. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then we'll move on to questions. And again, a different candidate will answer questions first each time. And all of the candidates will answer all of the questions that are posed. Just as a reminder, we are taking questions from the audience. We have our Evanston Township High School students in the back, Mose Miller and Evelyn Jacobson. So if you want to submit a question, raise your hand and they'll bring a card over to you and you can submit your question. Again, the candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. They will have 90 seconds to answer the questions, and then 2-minute closing statements. And closing statements will be given in reverse order from the opening statements. The answers are being timed. We have our timers, Katie and Lisa, in the front row, and they will give you a warning, the candidates a warning at 30 seconds. Could you show the placard? At 15 seconds, and then a stop. And when you see the stop, please, if you're in the middle of a sentence, you can finish the sentence, but don't make it a run-on sentence that goes on. So I will ask you to stop there. And this forum has been publicized, so we hope people will be watching. And again, that people will be voting. Voting starts on March 20th for early voting, and Election Day is on Tuesday, April 4th. With that, we'll begin our forum with the opening statements. And Candidate Parsons, you will give the first opening statements, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this forum and for everyone for coming out in this rain. So almost 8 years ago, I ran for my first term to be on ETHS school board. My reason then was to make sure every student from every neighborhood reached their full potential. I believed every student deserved to be seen just like my son was. Teachers, staff, and administrators knew him by name, and it wasn't because he was in trouble. He was an athlete, and that put a radar on him. It bothered me that other students, especially black boys, could not have that same radar. My son felt like ETHS was his second home, and I believe our school should feel like that for all students. I ran with high hopes of making sure every student was supported, so when we reviewed data, we also saw faces. During my second term, I became wiser to what it meant to serve students and our community at the same time. I saw our students find their voices, advocate for what they deserved, speak on injustices plaguing our town and our world. I saw them navigate a pandemic and struggle through learning how to re-engage. I realized I couldn't just lead our school if I wasn't willing to also serve in our community. It was important to me for all of Evanston to value our students. I'm running for this term, my third term, because all of the names are still not known, and some of the faces are still not seen. And I believe in the collective power of Evanston. So now more than ever, the future of our community depends on how well we prepare our students. In order to improve the racial gaps that exist academically, address safety and the mental health issues plaguing our students, we will need all hands on deck. My urgency is to advocate for students because they deserve the best that Evanston Township has to offer.
Thank you. Our next opening statement is from Candidate Pecars.
Hi, thank you for having this. I'm running for the school board because I want to serve my community and I want to help ETHS reach its goals and potential. I strongly believe that a high school that provides our students with an equitable and excellent education is integral to the health of our community. I also believe that students deserve an honest and inclusive education, particularly in our current national social climate in which some are attacking academic freedom and imposing censorship. I retired as an ETHS school counselor last June, but I feel forever a part of the ETHS family, and I care deeply about the students in our community. In short, my work is not done. And I believe I'm in a unique position to be able to advocate for the students of ETHS based upon a wealth of firsthand knowledge and experience. I've worked as a high school Spanish teacher for 7 years, high school counselor for 21, and served as the ETHS lead counselor for 12 of those years. I was elected to 6 3-year terms on the Teachers Council Executive Committee and served on 2 contract negotiations teams. I know ETHS. There are many issues and challenges facing ETHS, but my highest priorities focus on racial equity and inclusion, social emotional learning and support, college and career readiness, and school safety. What we see is that while some students are flourishing and thriving, some still are left behind and struggling. Our data and lived experience clearly underscores the persistence of a gap in academic opportunities and outcomes for students by race, gender, ability, and economic status. As a school board and a community, we cannot let up on our efforts to disrupt systemic racism and all types of discrimination in order to provide all students access to an academically challenging and supportive education. All students should feel safe physically and emotionally at school and experience a sense of belonging. We must affirm students' individual identities and demonstrate our belief in their capabilities through not only words, but our actions.
Thank you. Our next opening statement is from candidate Auntie. You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you, and welcome to all of you. Sitting here is a little nerve-wracking, so you're going to hear my voice probably quiver. As a candidate for this Board of Education, and someone who has been sitting here for only 2 years, I'd like to address some of the key issues that are vital to the growth and success of our school, and particularly our students. As Monique mentioned, our children are the future. Part of the goals that, and I'm skipping ahead because I don't want to mess up my time, that I really want to focus on, and I think are at the front end of the work that I'd like to do, rest in what is often called equity and inclusion. The true frame for me is justice and integration. I think about how every student deserves an equal chance in our school to succeed, and where we must create safe and welcoming environments that are past the typical ideas around safety in which we think about physical safety. Perhaps it's shootings, perhaps it's kids carrying weapons, but I also want to draw our attention to the safety in our classrooms around the curriculum that is presented. Our students, at times, if you're reading the Evanstonian or listening to what they're saying, talk about harm that is done within the curriculum and within their own peer groups. Not because anyone is trying to, in any way, harm our kids, but this is where we get to level up and ask the questions about how we can best support our staff and our students to reach their fullest potential. I talked to 2 young freshmen sitting out as I was preparing for this evening, and I asked them, how do they enjoy school? What's going on for them? They love this place. They're telling me about the design of the school, and it's a figure 8, and it's stacked on top. And I was pushing to hear, are there things that you want me as possibly as a board member to represent? And they really spoke about how they love the school. I said, is there anything you want me to change? No, thank you, stopping. So I'm here to represent not only our superintendent,
Thank you.
but our students.
Thank you. Our next opening statement is from candidate Scotty.
Thank you, ETHS Parents Engaged and League of Women Voters of Evanston for providing this forum. My name is Kristen Scotty. I am running because we need disability representation on the board. I am also looking to promote an intersectional approach to the equity work that's being done. Disabled students at ETHS show the poorest academic outcomes and the highest discipline rates. The greatest impact is felt by disabled students with intersecting marginalized identities. I am neurodivergent and otherwise disabled. I was a first-gen college graduate. I'm now finishing my PhD in material science and engineering at Northwestern. I have mentored numerous students in various capacities, including through the research experience for our undergrad program, the Office of Undergrad Research Grants Program, and high school student summer lab experiences at Northwestern. I've also worked to secure funded research internships for students from underrepresented groups and subsequently mentored those students. I have served on the advisory boards for TGS Child and Family Resources and Office for Undergrad Research, advocating for increased resources and support for students of excluded identities. I've given numerous talks on these topics also, from the local to the federal agency level. As a scholar liaison with the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation, I've done outreach to Chicago middle schools to begin college pathway discussions. In my work with Clinton Global Initiative University, I've mentored undergrad students applying to the program and throughout their participation. I've created and ran STEM after-school programs for elementary schools and developed curriculum for and taught mixed undergrad and graduate level courses in mathematical modeling. And I work with neurodivergent students through a local transition program. As a scientist, I understand how to work with and interrogate data. As a disabled person actively involved in the disability community, I understand ableism and how it plays out in our educational systems. This is the lens that I will bring to the board.
Thank you. And our final opening statement is from candidate Rolowitz.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Liz Rolowitz, and I am a parent and community member. I've been honored to serve on the District 202 ETHS School Board for almost 4 years now, and I hope to be able to continue to serve our students and this community. During my time on the board, I have worked through a pandemic and remote learning, which had an unprecedented effect on our students' learning. We shifted to remote learning and saw an increase in mental health issues as a result, which we addressed and continue to address to this day. Our students have not rebounded entirely from the pandemic remote learning. In 2022, the board hired a new superintendent. We reached out to the community and sought their opinion on what kind of superintendent they wanted to see. And we listened and we allowed community members to interview our candidate. And I'm very pleased with how much work we did getting community input in our hiring of the superintendent. All through this, I advocated for student well-being and success. My current concerns are continuing to address the predictability of race in academic outcomes, supporting our special education students and families to guide students toward college and careers, continuing to expand mental health services for our students, and addressing school safety. Thank you all for coming tonight. I look forward to sharing with you my passion for ETHS school board work and advocating for our students, and I hope to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to all the candidates for your opening statements. We'll now start with the questions, and we appreciate the members of the community sent in questions in advance. Our question sorters have been looking at the questions to try to combine them so that we don't have duplication. And again, if anyone wants to submit a question, we have our ushers in the back, Mose and Evelyn, and so if anybody wants to submit a question, please raise your hand, and they'll give you a card to submit the question. We'll start with candidate PCARS answering first, and then go in the order that they're seated in. And this one is, we're starting with safety first. And the question is, there have now been at least 2 incidents in which loaded firearms have been found at ETHS. Are you in favor of metal detectors to address this problem? If not, what else do you propose? Candidate PCARS, 90 seconds.
This is something I've experienced firsthand. I was in the lockdown at one of those incidents here at the school, and it's something we have to take very seriously. I think the issue is more complicated than simply the issue of metal detectors or not, but I'll answer directly about that because that's the question at hand here. I am not in favor of metal detectors in the traditional sense, the metal detectors we experience like walking through the airport. But I do think that in terms of physical safety, We need to explore perhaps some smart technology that can integrate into some of our existing security systems or cameras, and then take very seriously what that would mean and look like in terms of it would bring us an increased level of surveillance within the school building. But I think that metal detectors themselves, they erode a certain aspect of culture and climate. I think that they can be very intrusive and can add to a feeling of policing. And the implementation challenges specifically of metal detectors in the traditional sense are very significant. If you can imagine having 3,600 students enter the building in the morning. I think that along with this question, it's really important that we look at what it really means to be safe, and we continue to address the issues in students' lives that make them feel unsafe and might lead to gun possession and/or gun violence. We have to look at that along with technical solutions.
Thank you. Candidate Auntie, same question.
Okay, thank you. So I could spend 90 seconds saying no. However, I think that the aspect of the root cause is essential when we're thinking about what it is that is creating a need for a student to carry a weapon. What I then think about is how much is on our school and how much is outside of our school. So when I think about the partnerships that are so important with our community in safe passage, in interesting things for kids to do, I want to explore that more as a way of then helping our school maintain a level of what is often just titled safety. So I'll stop there, and thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Scotty?
Yeah, also no. And, you know, for practicality purposes, it just doesn't work. If you look at the numbers, if you look at the space and everything else. Also, if you have metal detectors, you need people to be at the metal detectors, people that are cops, essentially. And I don't support cops in our schools. And as far as the smart technology stuff, I've spoken about this at length in my DPOE interview and in the forum the other night. As, you know, addressing this as a scientist, there are major issues with these technologies. So I encourage people to read about that. In fact, there's an Inspector General report for the city of Chicago where they implemented some smart technology there. So you could look at that. I'm all about root causes, looking at the root causes for this. Partnerships with the community, increase social workers here to increase their capacity. They're completely overworked right now here. So increasing that capacity. And yeah, just looking at the root causes and dealing with it from that. Our kids don't feel safe. That's why they're bringing guns into school. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Rolowitz?
The issue of potential gun violence in ETHS has been very scary and traumatizing for the whole community, myself included. I also do not agree with metal detectors for the reasons that have already been stated, and especially because I believe that metal detectors, when they're used, can lead to profiling and bias in who gets chosen to be going through the metal detector, and it will just cause more problems than we need. I would like to see administration explore other technologies that are available to prevent gun violence before resorting to something like metal detectors. And there are many weapon detection systems and different approaches to school safety that I would like to see them explore first. And also, I feel like we need to address the issue of why students are bringing guns into school to begin with. And if they're feeling unsafe in their commute to the school or when they leave the school and go home, if they feel like they need personal protection, exploring why that's going on, partnering with the city of Evanston to provide wraparound services to students to figure out what's going on in the community, pursue restorative justice if needed, so that students don't feel like they need to bring guns to school. Thank you.
Thank you. And Candidate Parsons, same
Yes,
question.
Thank you. So, you know, with my background in criminal justice, this is a question that I think about all the time, because what we have to do is balance protecting our students and our staff, and understanding why they feel the need to have a weapon in school. It's not an easy question to answer. It's very complicated, and in order to respond to that, you have to understand that running or being a part of this district requires you to be dynamic and multifaceted. You cannot just think about one layer, so you have to think deeply about this. I don't believe metal detectors are the answer. I think we need to understand what's going on with our students in the community, but to understand what's in the community, you must be in the community. And when you do that, then you can come to the table and make a sound decision about how we protect the people that come into our building. We need teachers to feel protected. We need students to be able to learn with a clear mind. And so whatever decisions we make as a board has to balance their well-being and humanity and protection at the same time.
Thank you. We'll now go to question number 2, which will be answered first by candidate Auntie. And the question is, with the recent move away from the shared literacy goal and the elimination of 8th grade geometry, it looks like collaboration between District 202 and District 65 is diminishing. How do you view this relationship and its trajectory, and what is your role as a school board member in strengthening it? What would you like to see in this area?
That's a good question. One that has a subtext that I don't agree with, so it's boxing me in. So I see our relationship as solid. I sit next to board members. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be talking to you. And we have articulations, we discuss our curriculum and the testing and the data and analyzing those numbers. And so I understand some of the premise, but I would like to continue with what we are experiencing. So I'm not quite in alignment with the idea that we are moving so far away from one another that I see a need to do so much more. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Scotty?
So I don't really understand it as necessarily moving away from the joint literacy goal as much as I understood it as moving towards a whole student approach, trying to come together as both districts to address both the math and the reading, as well as everything else that isn't assessed by standardized testing. And I'm really, really for that. I think that there's a lot of work to do still on that, and we haven't seen all of that yet. But I'm really for that moving forward.
Thank you. Candidate Rolowitz?
I don't feel like there's a diminished relationship between us and D65. I feel like perhaps our relationship with them is better than ever. We have a close relationship with them. The board members know each other. All of the administrators work well together. The superintendents work very well together. They're in constant communication. I feel like we have a lot of shared goals, and D65 has taken on a more holistic approach to analyzing students, and they call it the portrait of a student. And at the high school, we call it portrait of a graduate. And it's a more holistic approach at just seeing how our students are doing, including their well-being and their social emotional and their extracurriculars in addition to their academics. And so I feel like we actually have a pretty good thing going with District 65 right now.
Thank you. Candidate Parsons?
So, yeah, I thought it was time for us to move away from the literacy goal. The literacy goal has been in a goal, I would say, for over 12 years. And we've been talking and discussing the same results. So we could either keep the goal and continue to talk about the same results, or decide that the goal needs to be changed and come up with a new goal. So we're fortunate to have two administrators, two superintendents that are new. So they come with new visions, they come with new expectations, they come with new energy, which allows us to refine a new goal. So they meet on a weekly basis, and yes, we are looking for them to look at the current condition. We just came out of a pandemic. So, you can't keep doing the same thing and expect results to change. You have to change and step away. And that's what we're doing. And so the districts are trying to reassess how they engage with each other, how they partner, how they work together, because the bottom line is we need to come up with something that's going to show improvement so our students feel like they can succeed. And that's what we're doing, and that's what I think we need to continue to do.
Thank you. And last answer is from candidate Pecars.
I think that what's really important is that as the two districts work together, that there's an emphasis on vertical alignment, that the students, their transition from the middle schools to the high school is seamless, and they're prepared to go to that next step. I think it's important, and I think that the people involved now feel this way, that they're all of our students. We're two districts, but the students are the same students, and they need that progression, that they're not theirs and then ours. I think that right now there is an importance on doing some follow-up and data and following up on what are the things that District 65 is doing, and how are those students doing when they're in high school, and us communicating that with each other and sharing that information so we know what's working and we know what we can build upon here at the high school. AVID is a program that maybe some of you are familiar with, which is a college going culture kind of program for students that are in the academic middle. And right now that's in 6th grade in the middle school, and it hadn't been. And it's a really nice model for how students can be involved in that program and then continue with it to the high school. So I think things like that are a good example of vertical alignment.
Thank you. We'll now move to the next question, which will be answered first by candidate Scotty. And the question is, what do you see as the top 3 challenges facing District 202 in the next few years, and how would you address them?
Sorry. There are too many students who are leaving ETHS not receiving the education that we are very capable of providing. I know the board has been working hard to address inequities, but I think that work needs to be done to improve with more of a focus on intersectionality. Currently, groups of students are effectively being erased from reports and corresponding conversations. Since marginalized student groups overlap, this impacts students carrying 2 or more marginalized identities the most. Disabled students, that's a big one. Another example is unhoused students. They're not included in any reports. How do we know that we're addressing the needs of this population? The Illinois State Report Card shows that the population is down 55% over the last 5 years at ETHS, while it's gone up 63% at D65. I don't think we're properly identifying these students. Data are consistently missing in various reports for students who are disabled, low-income English language learners, and LGBTQ. We need to hold folks accountable for reporting data on all marginalized groups, and we need to be disaggregating. I know I only gave you one, that we're missing all of these students, but that one is sufficiently important for all 3.
Thank you. Candidate Rolowitz.
For me, one of the biggest issues that we're facing and that we have been facing for a very long time is the racial disparities in academic outcomes. We've been very intentional with addressing systemic racism in the school for many years, but we are not finished with the work. We can't just end racism. It's embedded in many systems that our students interact with outside of ETHS as well. And I think we need to work to decrease the bias that students are experiencing in the school and continue to approach the whole student when working to mitigate the racism in the student experience. Another issue that I have concerns with is our students with IEPs. When we look at measurements such as graduation rate, extracurricular involvement, and student attendance, we see that our students with IEPs fare worse than any other demographic. We need to create equity tools for our students with IEPs so that they can achieve to their highest ability. We also need to see all data disaggregated by IEP status. And the third concern that I have is our mental health crisis resulting from the pandemic. Our students continue to struggle. The school did hire more psychologists and social workers, but the need continues. We need to continue to create a culture of addressing mental health and reduce the stigma of seeking help.
Thank you. Candidate Parsons.
So I believe there are several: safety, mental health, social emotional learning, and racial equity. And I know I gave you more than 3. But to lead in this very dynamic school, you have to understand that there's a lot of issues dealing here. This is where our community collides, and students come in the building with all those issues. We have an amazing institution, but we are still not doing well with some students. There are students that will experience ETHS and it will be the best that it can be. And then there are those that are struggling literally every day. This pandemic allowed us to push and see issues rise to the surface. And we can't ignore that unless we meet the mental health, the social emotional issues that are plaguing our students, they won't be ready to learn. So we know we have an achievement gap, we know we have an opportunity gap, but we have to meet our students where they're at. And the last thing I'll say is that across all spectrums, there's a continuum and there's a color line. And our Black students are performing far worse with IEPs or not than any other student in our school. So race is still an issue, and we have to address that, but we can't do that or without addressing the other issues, and we have to address all the issues at the same time.
Thank you. Candidate Pecars.
Okay. I do like what Monique just said about how all the issues are so interconnected. I think that if I need to name 3, which I do for this question, I would say that the top 3 is the predictability of academic outcomes right now by race, gender identity, ability, and low income status, with a particular focus on the racial predictability. Mental health and social emotional learning is one of them, and preparing students for their lives after high school, post-high school planning. In terms of, I want to say more about social emotional learning and support. I agree that students cannot optimally learn and grow if they're struggling socially and emotionally. And the pandemic really did affect students, not only in terms of academics, but in terms of emotionally and their socialization and in terms of those skills. I think it's important that we are addressing not just teaching the skills, but also creating a culture and climate in the school that's optimal for learning. That's social emotional support as well. And we need to honor and affirm each student's identity and give them the right tools to make a post-high school plan, be it one of the many things that they can do, college or otherwise.
Thank you. And the final answer to this question will be given by candidate Auntie.
So much of what has been said, I would completely support and second. I like to use this phrase that our kids many of them were hatched at home because of the pandemic. And because of that, I really feel that the pressure's on our staff to level up. It's hard, and I know what I'm saying is challenging, and I don't think that's people can't do it, but they need the support to do it. Kids need different approaches. I see a lot of, and I hear a lot of, and I think one of our top problems is the addiction to technology at a level that is pretty scary. And so thinking about how we can manage that within our spaces, because it's also an amazing tool. And I also think about addiction, period, the drug use, the things that I know that people and our kids are turning to in our schools is pretty alarming. And so I want to think about how to support that. But when I talk about the aspect of staff, I'm really thinking about the ways in which curriculum and learning can be leveled up within the design of these new blocks of time and within the curriculum itself to help leverage the cultural funds of knowledge that kids bring. And so, again, those three things are really important because our kids are better than ever. They've hatched at home, and we need to figure out how to help that come to fruition here.
Thank you. Our next question will be answered first by candidate Rolowitz, and the question is, last year, ETHS hired a sustainability coordinator, John Crawford. However, work on environmental sustainability at ETHS is far from finished. How do you plan to address the climate crisis at ETHS?
Thank you. This is a great question. I have always said that I feel like because ETHS is such an anchor in the community, we have the opportunity to really be a community leader when it comes to climate change. I think we could be big and bold in our decision-making and create initiatives that others would follow locally in the city of Evanston and Northwestern and other communities. I would love to see solar panels. We have so much room. We have so much acreage. We have roof, so much roof. And having solar panels would be an amazing initiative. We could do better with our recycling. I'm often disappointed when I can't find a recycling bin in the school. And we're hopefully shifting away from bottled water, which we do have here tonight, but sometimes we're able to use glass water and water coolers and things like that. But I do think that Evanston Township High School could be a real model for others if we were able to commit to climate change initiatives.
Thank you. Candidate Parsons?
So I think we're moving in the right direction. I think it is a process, and I'm proud that we are addressing it and trying to be consistent with sustainability. As a board member, I will continue to approve capital projects that support sustainability. And I will also continue to highlight our edible acres, which we have, and we grow food, and we use the food, and we, source the items that come out of the garden. I'm proud of our student committee that keeps us honest and continues to push us to do better and to do more. And so we will continue to hear from them and listen to them and have them bring their ideas to us so that we're conscious about the decisions we make, especially when it comes to capital projects within our school. So I'm always open to us doing better and learning more, and I do believe that we are trying to do that, and I believe that we're on the right track of doing more.
Thank you. Candidate Pekars.
I think that this is really important for us to have maybe a renewed and more urgent focus on sustainability, and I'm really glad that we've hired a director of sustainability. I think that my experience working with students is students really care about this issue. That climate change poses a direct threat to their future, and we owe it to them to look at this issue. And in that light, or in that vein, I think it's important to elevate student voice, and as we're working as the adults, that we involve students, and this is an effort that we work together at with a student as a school community in terms of coming up with ideas and creative ways of increasing our sustainability practices here. I know that the ETHS Foundation is working on starting a new capital capital campaign, and I would hope that the board could partner with the foundation to encourage that capital campaign to have a really strong sustainability focus, and to continue to have a values-based budget where the things that we're approving in the budget are done with a lens of sustainability.
Thank you. Candidate Ante.
So one of the things I think about is how little I actually know about this topic. And one of the ways that I've tried to increase my knowledge is to be a part of a futurist club, I guess it's called. It's Urgent Optimists. And we play essentially simulations into the future, 10 years, a world in which. And there's xerophoria, there's all these things. And one of the things that I'm learning about is how important it is to actually practice that way of thinking. And so when you ask me what would I do, aside from the brilliant things that people have set up here already, is I would really work to harness the collective intelligence of our kids who are thinking about these things. The rooftop you mentioned, brilliant, but how can we bring that into our courses? How can we use that type of thinking to then create projects here? And I do know, because there's a member in our community who is also part of this club across the world, who we are doing a lot of things here, composting in the kitchen, and how can we extend that further into our school so our kids know about that, the edible acres that you mentioned. I just think we have such an amazing system to enlarge here. So I would like to see that, but also courses that'll offer our kids opportunities to provide solutions to this as well.
Thank you. And the final answer to this question is from candidate Scotty.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to echo a little bit of what's already been said, but we have some really cool climate activist students here. Really, really cool. So I really think we need to integrate student voice in a lot of this. And I actually saw a post from one of the groups the other day where they were asking for curriculum. So, I mean, they're asking for the curriculum. Like, let's look at how we can make that work. And I also think like tying this into racial justice, economic justice, and stuff like that is important because, you know, climate change is, you know, it impacts people with various marginalized identities differently, and more so. And that's an important thing to understand as well. I do understand that through the capital improvements program, the budgeting process, that projects that show sustainability, you know, and stuff like that, those ones are typically prioritized. It was hard for me when I was looking for that information to find out exactly what the sustainability aspect was, so I think that we could improve transparency on that. And I also think when you do that, when you actually spell it out, it makes people think about it more, so that can, you know, improve there. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be answered first by candidate Parsons. The question is, by reputation, ETHS struggles to include and create a felt sense of belonging for students with disabilities. Do you agree? And if so, what would you hope to do about it?
I agree. I agree that we have not been able to be consistent in creating a sense of belonging for our students with special needs. I know that we have a current plan. It's a very new plan that's been adopted and shared with the board about how we engage our students. And so I'm looking forward to that data and determining, you know, what the baseline is and figuring out how we can do better. I think we have to continue to do as a school board what we are doing, and that is hold our superintendent accountable to making sure that all students are considered and seen. And so this is part of the expectation that we have for our superintendent, and we plan on seeing that data and determining what to do further.
Thank you. Candidate Pekars?
Yes, I think we need to acknowledge that students with with special needs, with disabilities, may not feel as much a sense of belonging here at ETHS. And I think part of it is that all students want to be heard, want to be seen, and they need to see that our actions and not just our words show that we believe in them and that we believe in their capabilities, that they have a space, that they have access and they feel welcomed in all the activities of the school. And that's a real culture and climate issue that I think we need to work on, all of us, students, faculty, staff. I think that we have sometimes special, students in special education have certain ways that they may be separated from gen ed students, perhaps because they're in certain classes together, they may be physically so, in the day school program, et cetera. And we have to try extra hard, not try, we have to do it. We have to make sure that students have access to the same experiences, resources, social opportunities, academic opportunities, despite their placement and what program they're in the high school. And so those are things we'd want to push the superintendent to follow through on.
Thank you. Candidate Ante?
This is so hard. I'm used to talking for a long time, too. The timing is hard. So I agree that we have the will. We have an amazing superintendent, an amazing staff that obviously don't want to do any harm to kids. But just as we look at racialized opportunity gaps, we have to understand then that racism is at the core, structural racism, institutional racism. Ableism is at the core of the question that you're asking us. And so what do we do about it? There's a level of education that has to happen. We know in our country, it's unreal the level of ableism that is considered to be legal still. And so do we have audits? Do we look at our buildings? Do we understand how our chairs are created? Who fits in them? Is that okay? What are the desks like in our classrooms? And also really thinking about, and this isn't my term, but the street level data. So we can look at satellite, we can disaggregate, and we must, and then we also have to ask our kids and our staff, what do they need in order to feel seen? So what are the conditions necessary for, as you said, to feel a sense of belonging? Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Scotty?
Yeah, so disabled, with a disabled kid in the district. This school is not safe for most disabled kids. Disabled kids, disabled black kids, disabled Latino kids, it's even worse. Disabled trans kids, disabled black trans kids, it's bad. We're talking about like bare minimums that are not being met. Disabled kids are suspended at the highest rates. Disabled black kids are suspended at disgusting rates. So they don't feel a sense of belonging because we're telling them that they don't belong. And when they are in classes, they can't largely get their accommodations met. Like it's a constant fight. It's a constant fight. And if you don't have parents that can spend, a bazillion hours a month arguing for this, and not because the parents don't care if they're not spending that time, but because it's just so much, you're not going to get what you need. And even if you do have that, you still often don't get what you need. Look at our outplacement data. We're outplacing students at a rate that's higher than the state average. There's a reason why. The ones with privilege take their kids out. We have a huge problem here that needs to be addressed.
Thank you. And the final answer is from candidate Rolowitz.
So ETHS has had a focus on belonging for a while now, and when we look at measurements for what we believe student belonging is, it involves things like, do they participate in extracurriculars? Do they go to class? What's their attendance like? Are they graduating on time? And these are indicators to let us know like how kids are doing. And unfortunately, our students with IEPs are not doing well in any of those measurements. So I think we need to look at what does belonging look like and feel like to our students, and create a mechanism where we have more of their student voice from students with disabilities, and so we can understand what their needs are and how they're not being met. And the basic fundamental needs that need to be met is to make sure that we're fulfilling their IEP requirements and their accommodations. And if we're not doing that, then they can't properly learn to their greatest potential. I'd also like to see an expansion of affinity spaces for our students with disabilities in the same way that we create affinity spaces on a racial basis. And yeah, I think we just need to listen to them and learn about what their needs are, and so we can address them.
Thank you. Our next question will be answered first by candidate P. Cars. The question is, the earned honors model has been around for several years. What evidence is there that it is effective? While there are more students in advanced placement classes, what are the grades and test scores looking like? Do you favor continuing, reducing, or expanding the model?
Okay, I think that one thing I need to be honest about is you asked about the data, and I don't have at the tip of my fingers the data on grades and that type of thing. But I've obviously worked in the school, and I have some lived experience with this. I very much support the earned honors, or what we refer to more so now, the pathway to honors approach. I think that while I can't quote what it has meant in terms of grade data, I do think it's really important in that freshman and sophomore year. This opens up a lot of access for students that didn't have that access before. When you came in as a freshman, you were pretty much tracked on a track that it was often difficult to then get out of. And now students have a more common experience to build the skills they need, and we have some more common sense prerequisites for courses. For example, in advanced science, where you need a certain level of math to do something, but otherwise things are much more all students can take advantage of those things. And I think that that's been, you've seen changes in who's taking those classes and the amount of students. I think it's something we should absolutely continue. And I think that if nothing else, it's gone a long way in us chipping away at having two schools within the same school.
Thank you. Candidate Ante?
Yeah, I think I'll pick up where you left off. So the concept really, for me, is how do we continue to de-track the school? I wish the question were a little bit more around, what purpose does having an AP track serve? But since I'll try to stay focused on this question, so yes, I do promote this. I believe that all students should be in shared spaces. So segregation in any way I find troubling. However, I also believe that students, if they want to experience another or more expansive or deeper level of learning within that space, they should. The real question for me is, do they get a GPA bump? That's where I have trouble. Kids working to their potential is amazing. All kids should work to their potential. Different kids working to different potentials shouldn't, in my opinion, get a grade bump. So that part is what I find to be challenging. And so if we want to talk about that, that'd be cool.
Thank you. Candidate Scotty?
Yeah, I think the earned honors model is good. I think that it should be continued. I think that there's an increase in Black students taking AP classes. I don't know if that's a direct result of the earned honors. I think that, more so sort of recruitment efforts and the Team ASAP and things like that have increased that a bit. But I also think that, we need to acknowledge that we've been told over and over again that a lot of these AP classes are not inclusive for the Black students who are in them. So that needs to be addressed. I also think that, we're constantly talking about increasing diversity in the AP classes, and acting like the AP classes are this, the pinnacle of achievement. And AP, it's for like one kind of intelligence, right? There are kids that don't do well in AP, but are still very, very smart. And I think we need to work on creating spaces that allow those kids to shine too. So it's not just AP, we need other avenues for that.
Thank you. Candidate Rolowitz?
Yes, our pathway to honors we definitely have the data to show that it's had a huge impact on racial diversity and participation in honors courses. Tracking is very harmful to students. Starting freshman year, if they were tracked, there's almost no way to get out of your track once you're tracked. And so having the pathway to honors and the mixed classrooms definitely has improved who is achieving at the honor status and then moving on to AP as well. So I definitely support that. And we have been a leader in doing that. It was a very bold decision that was made by ETHS many years ago, and other people have since followed our lead. So again, our influence is greater than just this high school. It goes beyond ETHS into the community and surrounding communities.
Thank you. And the final answer to this question is from candidate Parsons.
I think I remember the question, but regardless, of course, I support this. This is our commitment to equity and excellence. And so we are a high school that fully believes in that, and we're not going to back away from that. If anything, we try to improve upon it, but we will not move away from what it means to make sure that we are not fully in a segregated school. And so this is one of the methods that we're supporting. And I didn't get the privilege of passing this. I wasn't on the board then, but it is definitely something that we will continue to do as a board. It addresses racial equity, and it definitely stops the detracking. So that's what we're going to move and approve upon.
Thank you. Our next question will be answered first by candidate Ante, and the question is, and it's a long one. It was reported last year that a $225,000 sex abuse settlement was paid in 2021 by District 202 to resolve a 2019 federal civil rights suit alleging district administrators turned a blind eye to sexual abuse by district employees. This payment was never publicly approved by the Board of Education, and the district lost a 2022 suit against it alleging violations of the Freedom of Information Act in withholding this information from the public. How do you view your responsibility as a board member regarding transparency with the public, and what does or does not give you confidence that the administration is helping the board meet its legal obligations? Candidate Ante?
Transparency is essential. We are transparent. I have, what gives me confidence is I've spent 2 years with an amazing team of people. And let's just say there are 2 parts to the board meeting. There are the closed session part and the open session part. And so there is a level of faith that I understand the public needs to have. But I am someone who is sitting here to tell you that we are transparent and we are an extremely responsible body, public body, in which our discussions transpire. I have felt so confident in those spaces that we are being very responsible and, not to use the ableist language, but turning a blind eye to matters. And so thank you for that. I am going to politely not address the base of that question in the sense of the allegations that were made, but to really reaffirm that we are transparent and a confident body of people who are making healthy decisions for our district.
Thank you. Candidate Scotty.
So obviously, I'm not on the board, so I viewed all of this as an outsider. I think one of the things that really bothered me about this was that it was the student board member that was the one that spoke on this at a board meeting, because nothing had been said. And I get that board members are unable to speak on a lot of this because of the legal issues. One thing that I've wondered about is at G65, for example, they have individual board comments in the beginning of board meetings where people can share things maybe a little bit more personal or something like that. And it still would have to be really limited in this case, but it offers an opportunity for board members to kind of just reach out to the community. And I think that in this particular case, it would have been good to have some sort of connection there, to let the public know that, hey, we know that this is a big deal and people are hurting. Let the students know that. So I think that might be something that could be considered going forward.
Thank you. Candidate Rolowitz.
Yes, so the particulars of this suit, like Mira had said, we have closed session and we have open session, and closed session is when we discuss confidential, private matters that cannot be discussed in the public. And I just want to let everybody know that the board overall, every one of us takes the utmost of responsibility in confidential matters. We ask a lot of questions. We push back. We hold the superintendent and administrators accountable. And we have very long discussions in our closed sessions, and that's where a lot of our work is actually done. And so we do have to ask the community to trust us to a degree so that we can do that work within the legal parameters, and that is something that we hope that you can do when you elect us to this position, because unfortunately, we can't speak on these matters publicly.
Thank you. Candidate Parsons.
Yeah, so this will be a continuum. I think one of the most important things our community can do when they're thinking about who to vote for is really do what you're doing, and that's listen and take into consideration our beliefs and our values. And when you elect us to provide oversight. Your election of us is a trust in us that we will do the right thing for our students first. That is our goal. And so there are many things that we discuss in closed session, and we make hard decisions all the time. And you put us in this position to do what's best for our stakeholders. We will do that. We have done that with this case. And like my colleagues that are currently on the board said, this is not something we can discuss. We know it's a sensitive issue, and we're very thoughtful about how we communicate what we communicate. So no, we can't come out and start saying everything. We are a united board of 7. We have one spokesperson, and that's our president. So we don't speak at random because we care about our students. So we made a decision, and we did what we did, and we were transparent about what came out.
Thank you. And the final answer is from candidate Pekars.
Well, I, like Kristen, have not served on the board, so I really can't answer in terms of having any experience with this particular case. But what I do know, if that I were to be elected to the board, I feel very confident in what I know of the group of people who currently serve. And we have a new superintendent and a new assistant superintendent, and I have faith in their integrity. Honesty, integrity, following the law is of utmost importance to me. I also am a student services professional, and we deal with the push and pull between transparency and confidentiality all of the time. And that's a really tricky and important balance to keep. As a counselor, for instance, we really have to protect the people we're working with. In this case, we always want to center students and their needs, and we need to maintain confidentiality. And yet I know that when you are the public or a parent or a teacher and you don't know and you don't know what's happening, that can feel very uncomfortable and make someone hesitant to trust. And so I hope that you can trust us. I have a commitment to being a person of the utmost honesty and integrity, but know that we need to be as transparent as we can while also maintaining that importance of confidentiality as well.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by candidate Scotty, and the question deals with social media issues. The question is, the Surgeon General has said that social media is dangerous for young people. What is the school doing to combat cell phone addiction, or what should a school do to combat the social media issues?
I would need more context with the social media is dangerous for people. As a scientist, I want to understand where that's coming from specifically, because it's going to, I mean, it's how you interact with it, right? It's not. I think that we have to, these things exist. Technology exists, cell phones exist, social media exists. We have to teach our kids how to engage with them responsibly. And because I don't think that we can just wait until they're adults and they just figure it out, right? Like, it's a progression. So I think that that's how we have to deal with it. I know that there's an issue with students being on their phones too often in classes and getting distracted. We also have a board policy that says that they're not supposed to be on their phones. So looking at, how we either engage the phones in curriculum sometimes, because that's possible, or engage the social media in curriculum sometimes to show how that can be used responsibly, or figure out how to have the cell phones left at the door, so to speak. But I think that we need to address it in those ways.
Thank you. Candidate Rolowitz?
Yes, so as far as the social media concerns with it being harmful to the students, I would like to see some learning opportunities where our students can basically be taught to look at social media with a critical eye and have an understanding of what advertising is, what it does, and all of the other things that come along with social media as far as the peer pressure and bullying and anything else harmful that might arise through social media. So I would love to see the school create some learning opportunities for that. I know that it's discussed in some classes, but to actually offer a class on being social media savvy would be awesome. As far as the addiction, it's really tricky. Having phones in class is a necessity for some kids. They're doing work on their phone, they're doing research on their phone, and so having a total ban on cell phones wouldn't work and doesn't work. And I think it kind of comes down to more to a classroom management situation where teachers should be able to decide how they want social media or cell phone use to be done in their classroom, and hopefully they can manage it that way.
Thank you. Candidate Parsons?
Yeah, so we definitely have a board policy on cell phone usage. I hadn't heard the word cell phone addiction, so this is new to me. And, we discussed this in our discipline committee that I serve on. We track this issue. We try to figure out what additional resources can be given to teachers so that they can manage their class better with the concerns of cell phones. Technology is not going anywhere, neither is social media. It's big business. It is what it is, and adults use it probably almost as much as our children. And so I think we have to figure out how to build better relationships with our students and with our kids. And I will say that, you know, I'm speaking to the teachers, I'm speaking to parents as well. You know, we have to figure out how to re-engage with our students because, again, a pandemic allowed them to be isolated. So it takes some relearning and some readjusting. And I spoke of this earlier, our children are trying to learn how to re-engage. And as adults, I think we do too. But, yeah, so I don't think I'm, you know, have an opinion one way or the other about social media because I know the reality is it's not going anywhere.
Thank you. Candidate Pekars?
I very much agree in terms of the social media technology. It's not going anywhere. It's all about how we use it, what we teach about using technology in a healthy way, and how we support each other in dealing with it. Because it is true, students, adults, we're all affected by technology in our lives and social media and such. I think that in terms of cell phone usage in the classroom, this is just over and over again an issue that many teachers grapple with and are very concerned about. I think what we would need to support as a board is policies that we have a really clear, compassionate, and consistent policy on cell phone usage. I think that it can be really distracting to learning, but I think that any student, like any of us, when things are just not consistent, they seem unfair. And I think we have to talk about it. You know, we talk about different issues. This is a big issue in people's lives. So if we have rules, let's talk about why we have those rules and why we're doing what we're doing. Have students be part of the dialogue with that. I also think our IT department, I know that in our freshman advisory study hall, I'm not sure what they're doing in the sophomore advisory study hall, but often we'll push in and do things on digital literacy. And I think that's increasingly important. It's another thing that we have to teach and we have to be part of a student's education. And I think with things like Chat GPT, we have to think about what are we going to teach in terms of digital literacy, in terms of using things like that.
Thank you. And the final answer to this final question is from candidate Auntie.
And I love ChatGPT. Totally my favorite. How to write a board election speech using. So I am not going to be very favorable here. My kids at home are going to cringe because I think you're right, Monique. It is big business. It's kind of like big tobacco. And I think that the level of addiction runs all the way through every adult. And so what I would like is a big dome to be placed over the school that zaps everyone's connections and scrambles it. Because I do think that the reason why teachers are asking for policies to be, which we already have, more effective, or the phone jails, as the kids call them, is because they can see how ultimately challenging and destructive the addiction is. So when I think about why don't kids use their phones when they're playing tennis or an instrument, or it's because they can't do the thing with the phone in their hand. And so how do we create learning opportunities in which we are requiring more engagement? So that's when I was talking about that leveling up. It's so hard, but I say shut it down.
Thank
Phones
you.
are gone.
Thank you. And we will now move to the 2-minute closing statements. And as I said in the beginning, the closing statements will be given in reverse order from the opening statements. So we will go from candidate Rolowitz, candidate Scotty, candidate Auntie, candidate Pekars, and candidate Parsons. We'll start with candidate Rolowitz, and you have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Thank you. I would like to continue my board work and serving students because there is always more work to be done. My hope is that collaborating with the board and the superintendent, that we can improve the opportunities and experiences for all students, but with a focus on our students with the greatest needs. This would include dismantling racist structures that harm our Black and brown students, supporting our students with IEPs, increasing mental health supports, and creating a safe environment for all students. Our goal is to create college and career pathways so that every student has a viable plan when they graduate, and that they meet future success as a result. I want every student to be able to utilize the opportunities available at ETHS and to reach their highest potential. I believe that I can help do that in my service to our students. Thank you for coming out tonight and your show of support to our students. I hope that I can earn your vote, and I look forward to serving another 4 years on the ETHS School Board.
Thank you. Candidate Scotty?
I was told I wouldn't graduate high school. Next month, I'll defend my PhD thesis. That's not meant to be an inspiration story. What I'm doing now was always within my capabilities. The people who misjudged me made my journey harder. My experiences aren't unique, and we haven't solved those problems. Kids right now at ETHS are being treated similarly. I know this because of my own kids' experiences and others in our community. I know this because our data show it. Disabled students at ETHS show the poorest academic outcomes and the highest discipline rates. The greatest impact is felt by disabled students with intersecting marginalized identities. The erasure of disabled students is a huge issue. It's not the only one, though. While we tout the equity work related to trans, non-binary, and gender-expansive students, we have students who routinely cannot access restrooms during the school day. And we have zero safeguards built in for students who don't have a parent or guardian support. These students also report the lowest levels for sense of belonging. For that metric, data for Black, trans, non-binary, and gender-expansive students were not reported. But I'm confident that we need targeted programs to support these students specifically. Disabled, low-income, English language learners, and unhoused students weren't reported either. We can do better than this, but this will not change without representation, and it will not change without an intersectional approach. Board members ask questions when these reports are presented. Those who watch board meetings know that folks have been asking for missing data. As a board member, I will ask those questions, I will interrogate the data, and investigate beyond board packets. I won't expect folks who are being harmed by our systems to come to me. I will reach out. This is personal for me. For disability representation on the board, for intersectional focus, and for centering our most marginalized students, I need your vote.
Thank you. Candidate Pecors? I'm sorry, Candidate Auntie?
Thank you. It pains me to think about the disparity between our students' experiences in the school. And it also brings me great joy to think about how amazing the school is. So there's a both and that I want us to think about. My position on the board is one in which I help to establish the culture of our school, to set the tone for our district, and to define the standards and the personality of the institution. I hope to remain, and I guess I am. It kind of feels disingenuous, so let me, come on. I will remain, but I don't want that to seem like I'm taking that for granted. And so I'm participating in these events because it is important to be a part of the community and to honor this position and to have the humility to know that it is hard work. And I do feel in some way that I still need a vote. So when you're looking at the ballot, there is a write-in opportunity. And as people have said, there are interesting ways to have a two-way conversation. While there's one person for our board who does speak, when you do come and you show up or you write letters and you do speak to us, we are reading those letters. And so I want to engage in that conversation in the ways that OMA allows us to. I also want to think about how to set the direction and continue with where we're going, but with a new soup. We have this amazing opportunity to do that thing that I call leveling up. And it's going to be exciting, and so I want to be a part of that. And I also want to think about how our staff and students can be best supported by the work that we're doing, and I'm excited to be able to continue on and help in that work. So thank you. I hope I don't watch this recording because that was weird. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Pekars?
Okay. As I've been running my campaign, the most important question I think that we must ask, and I'm asking, is what more can we do? What is working for students and what is not? Which students are we reaching? Who are we not? What efforts should we amplify and what should we do differently? How can we put our words into action? And how can we carry out our work with fidelity? I'd like to summarize my priorities in terms of advocating for the students of District 202. In order to provide a truly equitable and excellent education for all of our students, we must acknowledge and continue to address the gap in academic opportunities and outcomes by race, gender identity, ability, and economic status. We must continue and evolve in our work to create an equitable learning environment for all of our students and not let up and not lose our sense of urgency. We need to support all students in their post-high school planning. We must prioritize mental health and student well-being. As I've said earlier, students cannot optimally learn and grow if they're struggling socially and emotionally. This means trying to figure out how to tackle effectively incorporating social emotional learning and social emotional support in all that we do. All students need to feel safe in school and staff. And as I've said, not only physically, but emotionally. And that means not just looking at technical solutions, but looking truly at our issues of culture and climate in our school. Students need to feel that they have a space at ETHS, that they belong. Student voice must be elevated. Faculty and staff must be supported in order to best serve our students and, in turn, our community. Having worked at the high school for 21 years, I've seen and experienced how everything really works inside the building. I've been part of numerous committees and initiatives.
Thank you.
I've observed, wasn't watching my time paddles.
Thank you.
Okay.
And our final closing statement is from Candidate Parsons.
Thank you. With over 30 years of professional experience in community-based nonprofits, I currently serve as the president and CEO of McGaw YMCA. I have seen firsthand how education lifts our entire community and have experienced leading youth programs that focus on literacy, digital media, opportunity, and achievement gaps. The bulk of my career has been youth-centered and community-focused. As a lifelong Evanstonian, this community has allowed me to become a youth advocate that is skilled in bringing people together from all walks of life. While I serve on the board currently, I lead in the community. This requires trust, access, comfort, and respect. Every day I interact with all members of our community, from youth to parents, retirees, business owners, and community leaders. I partner with people of all ages and find ways to empower them to be decision makers for issues that affect them directly. I seek to understand and lead with intentional and thoughtful approach that is informed, that is collaborative, that is equitable, and based on stakeholders' expertise. As a board member, it is not my only role to advocate, but to hold the district accountable to do better, to think more critically and be more creative. However, this accountability is never without comments of support, problem solving, and partnership. So it would be my honor to continue serving Evanston's only, and I believe the world's best, high school as a District 202 school board member, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this point, I'd like to thank the candidates, Monique Parsons, Leah Pekars, Mira Anti, Kristen Scotty, and Liz Rolowitz. Let's give them a big hand. And really, no matter who you vote for, you have to give all of these people credit for being part of the community and wanting to be an active part of the community. It's hard work. These people are not paid to do this work, and so this is really very important, and you can tell from the answers to these questions that they're all really dedicated and want to do a good job. So again, Election Day is Tuesday, April 4th, but early voting starts on March 20th. So Mira Auntie you have to write in her name. So get the spelling of it. And she's running for a 2-year board position, and the other 4 candidates are running for 3 4-year terms, so you can vote for 3 of them, and unfortunately, 1 will drop out. So again, this is very important. I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters of Evanston for putting on this forum, and the parenting, okay, yeah, for putting on this forum, because I think it's important for people to know and see the candidates and hear them and see who they're voting for. And I'd like to thank all of you who came out tonight, and also anyone who watched this on live stream or is watching this later on. Please be sure to vote. It's so important. And in addition, I'd like to thank our timers, Katie O'Neill and Lisa Seegers. They had a very long night of just, keeping track of that time. So thank you so much. There are question sorters, Georgia Vlahos and Elliot Frolickstein Appel, and our ETHS students, Mose Miller and Evelyn Jacobson, who collected questions. So thank you so much. And it's great. I hope that you continue to be involved. And if you're 18, or if you know some 18-year-old students, encourage them to register. And if they're not registered, get them to register and to come out and vote. How cool is that, where you can vote for somebody on the school board for the school that you're attending? So this is wonderful. Again, thank you to everybody. Have a safe trip home. And for those of you watching on tape or live stream, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.